Planning your content shouldn't feel like you're throwing spaghetti at a wall. Planning the quarter itself shouldn't feel like that either. So, I'm going to let you in on my specific quarter 2 planning and a little bit about how I did some of that work for a client of mine, looking at their YouTube data and podcast data to make informed decisions. We're not just coming up with random things here. So, this is about content and a little bit of business quarter 2 planning. Now, I look at the beginning of a quarter as kind of like my own personal new year. I generally know what my year is going to look like as far as like planning, because I can plan. What's the phrase? Um, humans plan, God laughs. So I generally make a plan for what I want the year to look like and what action steps I would do in order to achieve those outcomes or get as close to those outcomes as I possibly could. Um, However, my main thing is focusing on a quarter. For 3 months, I can dial into something. And I know we've heard, or I assume we've heard, the concept of it's easier to really achieve things if you're thinking about a 90-day window rather than 365 days. Because 365, you feel like you have all the time in the world. 90 days, it is time to get to work and more specifically, be realistic about what you can accomplish based upon your capacity, based upon what the data says. I'm a data girl. I don't make a whole lot of decisions unless it's based in data, down to the Apple Watch. That's how I plan my workouts, down to the content that is on LinkedIn or Instagram and in the podcast content. I need the data to back those decisions up, and being able to look at that on a quarterly basis is super helpful for me. So, in this, we are looking at the data, what capacity I actually have, and what does it look like for me to still lean into the balanced life that I say that I want. Because I don't want to just say something just to say it. I want to actually really steep myself into that. Am I getting enough sleep? Am I overworking myself? That the goal is to not overwork myself. Am I making time to work out? Am I making time to go on a long stroll with the dog in the middle of the day? Because that's important to me. Is definitely important to this Aussie Doodle. If anybody knows about Aussie Doodles, y'all know they are a high energy breed. Okay. So we're walking through all of these things and being strategic about it. We're not just, again, throwing spaghetti on a wall about our content and about our business as a whole. Now, I'm not a business coach. I'm not your social media girl. I know what I know and I don't know what I don't know, but I do know podcasting. I do know content. Okay. So that's what we're going to look at. Looking specifically, I don't know if you have heard, but there is a book, and if I remember what it's called, I'll put it on the screen for those that are watching on YouTube. And for those that are listening to the audio, I'll put it in the show notes. But there's a book out there that talks about prioritizing very specific thing, focusing on one specific thing so that you can get to your goal faster. We can't having so many times before I've really focused on being like, oh, okay, I have these 5 things that I really want to accomplish, but then that splits my energy. I can't focus on all 5 of those things at one time and truly give it the energy that it deserves. We can do anything. We can be anything, just not all at the same time. I'm sure that's not the first time that you have heard that. It's definitely not the first time that I have. So I have 2 main priorities for quarter 2. The first is being consistent with content, and the second is more based in a shift in my revenue for my business and where the revenue is being projected to come from, specifically based upon, again, my capacity. So looking at priority 1, inconsistent content, there are 3 areas that I'm looking at. The first is posting on Instagram daily. Now, today is April 8th. There is what's math? 16 more hours left in the day, and I don't think that math is correct, but we're going to go with it. And a post still needs to go out today. Here's why I'm looking towards posting every single day on Instagram, and it's not out of influencer life. It's out of, to be quite frank, Instagram just simply rewards those that are staying on the app as long as possible, and especially those that are staying on the app as long as possible creating content. So, showing up sporadically is not something I can keep playing around with. I primarily exist over on LinkedIn, and one of the things that I'm still going to continue to do is on LinkedIn, still posting that 3 to 4 times a week, but changing the way that I speak over there just a little bit more. I'm going to play around. In quarter 1, I really focused on the hashtags that I was using and who I was looking to connect with. In quarter 2, I'm making a little bit more of a shift to focusing on doubling down on my relationship building with line of business partners, because I think and the data shows us that people you convert a little bit better when you have a warm lead, essentially, and being able to have space and create space for other people to exist in their zone of genius while I exist in my zone of genius. In podcasting, if that person's a copywriter, I don't do copywriting, so we can share back and forth. I don't build websites. We can share back and forth. If that person's a business coach, then we can share back and forth, and being intentional about creating those relationships. That's how my LinkedIn stuff is shifting a little bit. Still talking about podcasting, still posting about this podcast, still posting about the wins that my clients make, the wins that I make, all the things, the lessons, because we don't always win. We have to be very honest about that. We don't always win. So that's what LinkedIn is looking like. And for a significant portion of 2024, last year actually, I spent a lot of time really focusing on my email list and growing the email list and nurturing the email list and all those things, and having all these different sequences. And as fruitful as that was, because I'm shifting to Instagram and LinkedIn and putting a whole lot more of my energy into those spaces, I have to be realistic about what I'm doing in my email list. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to abandon them. Okay, we spent time building those relationships, we spent time building this list, but it does mean that I am more so creating a more streamlined funnel where people can sign up for a lead magnet, essentially, and then we're able to move them through. Right now, I have a 12-week email nurture sequence, and 12-week as of today. So the first email went out today, that I will be able to turn into something else in quarter 3. So again, it's still slowly building that email list, but I have to be realistic about what my capacity is. And the decision behind this is really steeped in, unfortunately, and as someone that really focuses in the basis of why I started doing podcasting is based on creating visibility for other people and for our businesses. Unfortunately, if people don't see you doing the things, they think you're not doing anything. And I hate that that is a reality, but it truly is. If people don't see you posting, they think your business is you're out of business, rather. If people don't see you talking about I feel like my generation, and maybe not even just my generation, but especially those that are in the late 20s, early 30s, we have this obsession with really screenshotting our bank account or screenshotting our Shopify revenue page or a dashboard to prove that we have been busy and booked and busy and doing all the things, when that's a rant for another time. The point is, I'm doubling down on Instagram, posting daily. Sunday to Sunday, once a day, stories in there, working to grow that, just so that I can have some version of visibility to back the work that I'm already doing behind the scenes. Two, LinkedIn is one of my main lead generators, and one of my main converting platforms. So I'll still be handling business over there, with a shift in more so connecting with my line of business partners, because again, I can't do all the things, but I can connect with other people who are doing their magic. They're working in their zone genius. They're working with their own gifts. So then we're looking at priority number 2. This is where we go into our revenue, leaving a little bit out of the marketing content space, but more so in the business space. So we all know that I do podcast management for business owners, and I'm a person that typically works behind the scenes. And I spent a significant portion of quarter 1 really getting people in a spot where they can understand and connect with me to manage their podcasts in whatever capacity that we agreed on. Now, however, I truthfully don't have the capacity to take on those version of clients in quarter 2. So I'm shifting what I'm offering into this new quarter, which is really going to be focused on guest booking and strategy sessions. Now, guest booking is really for the people who aren't quite ready to go into podcasting as a host, or they have a podcast and they want to be able to utilize other people's platforms that they've built in order to grow their business. Now, this is helpful to me and the end user, the client, because it allows people to get access to the network that I've established of podcast hosts and those in the podcast industry, and really help people zone in and use podcasts at guesting as a true marketing strategy for their business. And we spend 3 months together, and if you want to continue, cool. If you don't, that's fine too. But it doesn't involve me being as intimately involved as I would with people who I'm managing their podcasts. So the second thing is strategy sessions. These serve as intensives that allow me to support the people who we're spending an hour really diving into their content strategy, their podcast strategy, and even their guesting strategy for podcasts. I feel like I'm saying that weird, but this is for people who aren't quite ready to release the reins, but they want to be able to get some feedback from somebody that's more of their expert in the podcasting space and partner with them, kind of like in a thought partnership with them. So shifting my business to focusing on those 2 services is going to help me be able to manage my capacity, me be able to manage the client load that I'm already supporting, and this podcast one, and then still be able to support new people that I interact with and as I go along.
Okay, editing Tahjma here. All the Gen Z folks are using the little mics, so I thought I would give it a try. One of the easiest ways to grow your audience without spending hours creating content is just talking. Getting in front of the right audience and having a conversation, kind of like the one you're listening to right now. Podcast interviews, they are chef's kiss for this, perfect for this. But here's the thing. Guesting on podcasts isn't just about showing up and talking. It's about turning those interviews into real business growth. Listen, I send out one simple, actionable podcast guesting prompt every single week. It always features something you can do in 15 minutes or less, but creates long-term impact. If you want in, sign up using the link in the description. It costs you nothing but your commitment to leveling up your marketing strategy as a podcast guest. All right, back to the show.
Let's think about what you know that you need to be creating content. Let's not dance around that fact. We all need to be creating content for our business in whatever way that that looks like. If you're a copywriter, lean into writing text posts because you're a copywriter. Excel in copywriting on LinkedIn, or the carousel posts on Instagram. What are you doing to show up for your business in that space? And then two, what does revenue look like? I don't know if anybody else notices, but there is a flow to how people make buying decisions in throughout the quarters. People in the service based industry, at least within quarter one and quarter two, people are willing to spend the money to elevate their business and their brand. But then in quarter three, things kind of trail off. People are spending more money in hospitality industry, having fun. The kids are on vacation or at summer camp, all the things. So being able to prepare for those kind of shifts in the natural market and how people energetically and what human behavior tells us about people's buying decisions is super important. And quarter four is a beast in and of its own. It depends on which market. From what I can tell, it depends on which market you are working in. So when I was looking at building my quarter two strategy, my quarter two plan, I really focused on the fact that I'm a scientist at heart. Okay. I studied human behavior in school. I was really all about what does the data tell me? Because I don't want to be making this information up. What does the data tell me? And the data says, yes, 21 days makes a habit, but 90 days tells us what real data we can actually work with. We give it 90 days, and that tells us what's actually resonating with people because it takes the algorithm, it takes search engines, all these things away about 90 days to figure out what are they doing? Are they going to be consistent? What's going even on a human behavior level? You if you see someone that just starts posting sporadically and suddenly they're posting every single day or suddenly they're engaging and it's been 3 days, you're going to stop and say, I wonder how long they're going to keep this up. Let me hold off and see. And naturally, it takes us about 3 months to really set a stage of you can expect this from me moving forward. So that's the angle that I'm coming from. Um, I always ask this main question: what is someone likely to do if I post this? If I email this, if I structure the podcast episode like this, if I create the thumbnail to look like this, all those things. I'm always asking that question because then that informs how I move forward. All of my quarter two plans, from the consistent content, keeping that up, from Instagramming, posting on Instagram daily, from continuing the LinkedIn strategy, the idea to focus on my line of business partners rather than focusing on my client really came from looking at the data and how I want to be able to connect with my ideal client at the end of the day. So, all of this goes into that. So, how did I do this same exact thought process for a client? When I'm managing someone's podcast, I'm thinking about how do we make this work? What is the data telling us again? So, we looked at this client's YouTube channel and their podcast data, and we found what confirmed what we already knew or what I already knew. There is high retention in shorts. Whenever a short video was posted, a third of the people that were watching the short video carried over into the long form video on YouTube specifically. So quick wins are super helpful when we're thinking about that, thinking about our strategy as well. What's going to be helpful for my client to be able to feel like they can withstand doing all this work? Because someone on my end, I know that it takes a considerable amount of time to see the version of results that I'm looking for, not just the quick hello, can I say it? Not just the quick virality. We need to be able to create safety nets for ourselves. So that's where the shorts are coming in. And then the data also told us what topics emotionally resonate with people. So when you're looking at your data, what are people going back to? Are people returning to your channel for a specific topic? Is there a topic that people are more likely to want to hear from you than others? That helps you further confirm your niche and further refine who it is that you're supporting. We also need to make sure that our solo content isn't scripted. Okay. So a lot of people are using AI to build episodes and all the things, myself included. The main difference is you want to make sure that you are not building a script, rather an outline. Okay. And that shows up as an issue or a challenge to overcome, because when you see a script in front of you, you tend to lean into, let me make sure I'm saying exactly what's being written, because I worked on this and AI has to be right. First off, AI is not always right, but then two, the outline instead gives us space to be able to show our personality, gives us space to be able to share that piece of information that we just thought of, or gives us space to share an anecdote that we think of in the moment. It creates breath in the conversation. Please stop writing scripts for your things. Unless you are standing there reading from like a little teleprompter kind of vibe, keep a little bullet list. Even me, I have my little iPad here, and it's not a script. It's a bullet list of the things that I want to make sure that I touched on. So here are the main takeaways that I want you to leave when you're thinking about building your quarter two or even your quarter three plan. First off, we're not creating our plan. We're not creating our strategy based upon a vibe. Now, I like a vibe more than anybody else. I like for things to feel fun. I like for things to feel engaging and all the things. However, data matters, and there's so much data out there. People are hunting our data down. You Every time you open your cell phones, there's an app that's telling us, "Hey, do you want to let this app track your data?" No. Because all these people know and all these businesses know that data matters, and you should be using your own data to be able to tell you what's happening. If you're using Asana to um, to project manage a lot of your projects, look at how many tasks you completed in a given day. Are you completing more tasks on Mondays? Are you completing more tasks on Thursdays? One of the best days that I'm completing tasks are Wednesdays and Fridays. So I stopped trying to block off or stop trying to take calls on Wednesdays and Fridays. I blocked Wednesdays and Fridays off for me to dial into getting some work done. I allow myself to go to the gym, and then I come back, and then that is our zone in time. And I knew that because that's what my data told me. The other thing that I want you to take away from this is what worked last quarter may not work this quarter. And that's okay. All right? That's okay. Things change. You're not creating a whole new um, offer. Rather, you're just simply saying what worked last quarter for me is really dialing into helping people with podcast management. That was the thing that I was really focused on, securing whatever clients, whatever people needed to work with me on a podcast management front. In quarter two, that's not going to work because I'm just not going to have the energy. I'm not going to have the capacity. I'm not going to have the bandwidth in order to support people in the same way. So I shift my energy to be able to help people in a different way, still keep the revenue going, but in a different way. So don't try to travel everything that you're doing to every single quarter. In quarter three, it's going to look different because, again, like I said, in quarter three, typically people are looking to spend more of their discretionary income, more of their expenses on hospitality stuff, on vacations, on summer camps. They are not thinking about having a podcast manager. My data tells me that most of the people that I work with, that some of the people that I connect with from colleague to colleague, people are pausing their podcasts in quarter 3 for this exact reason, because you have other things to spend your time and energy on. Understandably so. So quarter 3 is going to look different. And then the very last thing is, your planning doesn't have to be rigid, but it does need to be rooted. So if you notice, the plan that I had is pretty baseline: consistent content, revenue from podcast booking, and strategy sessions. That's my main focus. I don't have to overcomplicate it. And that allows me, whenever I'm making decisions from day to day, talking to different people, if somebody says, "Oh, Tahjma, can you come speak at this thing?" Or, "Oh, Tahjma, can you lead this workshop?" Does that help me create consistent content and develop revenue from guest booking and strategy sessions, which is what allows us to stay rooted, not rigid. The same thing goes for the client that I mentioned. We know that we need to keep putting out YouTube shorts because the data says that we need to keep putting out YouTube shorts, and it helps that particular client be able to see some version of immediate return. They're able to immediately have that emotional release, because if you're spending money in order to put this episode out, and if you're in a industry where sometimes that episode doesn't hit until maybe 6 months from now, we're listening to songs now where from the music industry, where sometimes that song was created in the 90s and it doesn't hit until 2023. There's so many examples of that. So that's all I got. Hopefully this was helpful for you, and I'm going to leave us off on our faith note.
Okay, editing Tahjma one more time. Me and the tiny microphone are back. You ever feel like you're showing up on podcasts, putting out all these episodes on different people's podcast episodes, your own podcast, creating content, but it's not really doing much for your business? Yeah, it's visibility, but is it actually leading to deeper relationships? Is it actually growing your audience? Are clients actually ready to sign on the dotted line because they listen to your podcast? That's exactly what we figure out in a podcast strategy session. In 1 hour, we build a clear return on investment driven plan to make sure every interview or episode moves your business forward. Want to see if this is the right move for you? Schedule a coffee chat using a link in the description. All right, back to the episode.
For those that have not tuned in to Coffee Chats podcast before, we leave with a faith note, because this podcast and the business behind this podcast, iMoves Management, is based on the scripture Matthew 17:20, which is, if you have the faith of even just a mustard seed, you can tell that mountain to move from here to there, and it will move. It takes a whole lot of faith for us to wake up and decide to create our own economy. As I've heard some people say, it takes a whole lot of faith for us to know and trust that everything that is coming to our business is for our business, is for our life, that the life that we're creating works with our business rather than the other way around, if you will. So the faith note that I have today is actually coming from Job. And very simply put, I recently finished Job, and if you've been following along for a little bit, I've been in the books of wisdom: Proverbs, Psalms, Proverbs, Psalms, and Job. I want to say Ecclesiastes is a part of that, but perhaps not. But I've been in the books of wisdom, and I've just finished Job. And one of the things that really resonated with me at the end is, Job is sitting there and he's immediately apologetic to God. He's immediately apologetic and repentant to God for having the audacity to question, "I don't know about you, but I would not want God's job. I would not want the job of forgiving people over and over. I would not want the job of being a provider and a friend and a father and a comforter and all of these things. And Job and Job's friends are spending the entirety of the book of Job talking about, oh, you're not, you must have sinned in this particular way. Oh, Job is talking about, I've given generously, I've done all this work, I've put all this energy out there. And God is like, hello, Job. How dare you think that you have the ability to come and question me to the degree that you are questioning me? You can ask questions, but don't question me. That's a very different thing. You wouldn't want the responsibility of holding all of this world on us. And it's a representation of, people often talk about Job from the extent of suffering well. And the thing that I receive from it is being able to recognize when you are coming from a place of pride. Job talked endlessly about how much work he's put out there. He talks endlessly about how much good he's done, how little he has sinned. And while those things may be true, he talks about it from the angle of as though it was all from his strength, all from his understanding, all from his ability, when that's simply not true. Even when we're thinking about quarter two planning, like I said at the very beginning, humans humans make a plan and God laughs, because at the end of the day, I have a plan for what I'm thinking quarter two is going to look like, and God could have a completely different will for that. And it's my responsibility to lean into that and to lean into following and understanding and being obedient to the will of God, and to not be so prideful. I've struggled with that in the past, and it even flickers back and forth to being so prideful that I would think that I can control all the things. Even in creating this quarter two plan, I paused to say, okay, God, here's what happened in quarter one. What do you want quarter two to look like? And pausing to truly listen for that. And you know that it aligns because it aligns with His word. And He'll tell you straight. So hopefully that resonated with somebody. And I can't wait to talk to you next week on Coffee Chats Podcast. Bye. You've been listening to Coffee Chats Podcast from iMoves Management, a marketing agency serving small business owners. This episode was written, hosted, produced, and edited by me, Tahjma VanBuren. If you want to learn more about anything you heard on the show, schedule your coffee chat using the link in the description. We'll talk all things podcasting and how to use it as a true marketing strategy for you and your small business. Go to imovesmanagement.com for further information. Thank you to our listeners for supporting the show. Bye.